Oh, thank you so much. John left out the most important bits about me. I'm Asian, and yes, I'm very short. So I've told my boys when they grow up, chances are they're going to be just like me. Not very good looking and very, very short. So I've told them your only chance in life then, because no girl is ever going to like you, your only chance then is to study hard and make a lot of money. Now, that's a joke. It's a joke. I've never said that to them. But every Asian here right now is saying, are you sure? Because that's what my dad told me. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. I'm just joking. Now, when I was a boy, I learnt the piano. Like every Asian here, I had to learn the piano. And like every Asian, I did it by setting the oven timer for 30 seconds and then practicing. But because I was no good at it, what my teacher had to do was just give me one line of music per week. So each week she gave me one line. I'll play it with my right hand, play with my left hand, combine the two hands, and then next week she'll give me another line, another line. It was long, slow, tedious, and painful. But one week she gave me a line of music, and when I practiced it, it sounded terrible. It was just noise, but it's what was in front of me, so I just played it obediently. But then next week when I went to the teacher and played it, she said, you missed the key signature at the start. You've been playing all the wrong notes. That's why it sounded terrible. But maybe that's how life feels like for us right now. Maybe we feel like we've been playing all the wrong notes because we've done exactly as they've told us to do, but somehow we feel miserable, exhausted, and trapped. So what if we've been doing things the wrong way? So welcome to this chapel series. I'm calling it Unleashing the Power of Paradox, flipping the script on an upside down world, where we're going to look at stories that Jesus told in the Bible, because in these stories, Jesus is going to flip the script for us so that we might live life the right way up. So today we're looking at this. We're looking at the paradox of freedom. And the question we're going to answer is this: what do I have to do to be free? And we just heard a story in the Bible, a famous story in the Bible about a young man. And this young man is going to try to follow the script that we've been given. But in the story, there's going to be a paradox. And Jesus is going to use this paradox to flip the script for us. So what is the story that we've been told? How can I be free? Well, the script we've been given is this: do whatever you want. Don't listen to anyone else. Only you can choose what to do. Or simply, you do you. And we see this in the story. Jesus continued to tell the story. There was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had. He set off for a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth on wild living. We read the story where a younger son asks his father for the inheritance. And the father gives the younger son his money. And this son is now set free. Free from authority, free from tradition, free from his family. And he's free to travel. And he's free to do whatever he wants to be happy. Now, my wife and I once, for a date night, we went to a college town and we went to a restaurant. But when we got there, there was a long line because no matter how young or old you look, they were IDing everyone. So my wife and I got at the end of the line and we pulled out our IDs because no matter how young or old you look, they were IDing everyone. And so we slowly shuffled until we finally got to the end of the queue and we had our IDs out because no matter how young or old you looked, they were IDing everyone. But then when we got to the front of the line, the security guy just looked us up and down and he just waved us in without our IDs. And we thought, ouch, at least pretend you needed to ID us. But they had to ID everyone. Why? Because we have this storyline that when you are grown up, you are free to do whatever you want to do. You are free to drink whatever you want. You are free to travel wherever you want. You are free to spend your money however you want. It's a great story of freedom. My wife and I, we lived in the USA for 5 years, and it is the country of freedom where you are free to do whatever you want. And what I love about the USA is this: you can go to any restaurant, order off the menu, and you say, hey, I want the chicken and lettuce sandwich, but instead of the chicken, can you swap it for ham? And instead of lettuce, can you swap it for cheese? And they will give it to you. You are free to redefine reality how you want. You are free to choose your own morality. It's a great Western storyline. It is the reason why you can date whoever you want to date, not who mum and dad want you to date. It's the reason why you can live in whatever city you want, not where mum and dad grew up. It's the reason why you can take whatever job you want, not the job that mum and dad did. But if it's such a great storyline of freedom, why do we feel so miserable, exhausted, and trapped? Well, this is the paradox of freedom. If I'm so free, why am I so trapped? Back to the story. After this youngest son had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. The wheels fall off for this young man. But why? Well, this is the paradox of freedom. Paradox number one: freedom can actually lead to anxiety. I remember a while ago, my wife and I were in Italy. This is the birth country of gelato. And we went to the place you were meant to go for gelato. But they had 500 different flavors. And so as we're lining up for gelato, my wife and I were both in a panic. Which one do we get? Which one do we get? And as we're shuffling further and further in front of the line, we're getting more and more anxious. And then finally, when we get to the front of the line, we still didn't know what we want. It was terrifying. What should have been a great experience of gelato became a source of stress, anxiety, and terror. This is the paradox of freedom. Barry Schwartz, TED speaker, says it's the paradox of choice. Ironically, by having more choice, we end up becoming more anxious. Paradox number two is this: freedom can actually lead to loneliness. This is Esther Perel. She's not a Christian, but she has millions of followers on her podcast, Where Should We Begin? And she's a relationship therapist, a Belgian relationship therapist. And I remember one time this woman rang in, and it was heart-aching, just listening to her. This woman's story was she had moved from Central America to leave tradition, to leave authority, to leave her family behind and start a new life in New York, to be free. But now she was free, she was all alone. Mark Sayers, who's a pastor in Melbourne, Australia, he explains it this way. He says it's like we have 3 buckets in life, and we only have enough resources to fill each bucket in a sort of way. So we have freedom, relationships, and meaning. And if you want to have more in one bucket, you've got to have less in the other bucket. So if you want to improve the quality of relationships, well, freedom has to go down, because with relationships comes responsibility. If you want more meaning, well, again, freedom has to go down, because now you're living for a bigger story than just your own. But what we've done in the West is we've gone the opposite. We've maxed out the freedom bucket, which leaves us empty in the other 2 buckets. And Mark Sayers says this is why we now suffer from consumerism, hedonism, individualism, isolation, loneliness, tribalism, paralysis, depression, discontent, confusion, and emptiness. Paradox number 3 is this: freedom actually isn't free. So when you're young, this is what always happens. When you're a child, your parents are always telling you, go to bed, please, please, just go to bed. Why? Because when you go to bed, boom, this is what your parents are doing. They're doing Netflix. And it's not just Netflix, it's actually Netflix ice cream. But then this leads to what I call the Netflix ice cream mismatch. Because as a parent, you start an episode of Netflix, you start a bowl of ice cream, you finish your episode of Netflix, but you're only halfway through your bowl of ice cream, so you have to start another episode of Netflix. But when you finish your ice cream, you're only halfway through this episode of Netflix, so you have to have another bowl of ice cream, and boom, before you know it, it's midnight and you've finished another tub of ice cream. So I asked a nurse at work, do I have a problem? And the nurse said, well, have you had the Netflix screen of shame yet? I said, no, tell me more. She said, well, if you watch Netflix long enough, boom, the screen will go blank and say, are you still watching? And you'll see your reflection in the screen with the empty tub of ice cream and you're saying, yes. But you can't blame us because that's what it means to be a grown-up. You can do whatever you want to do. I have a friend, she has a 4-year-old child, got the child asleep, but in the middle of the night, the child wanders into the TV room and sees mummy with popcorn and ice cream and then said, oh, this is what mummy does at night time. And yes, this is what mummy does at night time because this is what grown-ups do. But there's a price. There's a price for our freedoms. Because when you wake up, you're sleep deprived. You pay for it with addictions. You pay for it with credit card debt. And so Alexander the Great said this about the Persians. The Persians will always be slaves. Why? Because they don't know how to say no. Our freedom comes at a price. So what can we do? How can we flip the script? Well, let's look at the story again. Jesus says this. When the younger son came to his senses, he said, oh, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out, go back to my father, say to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf, kill it, let's have a feast, let's celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. We flip the script by having the son come back home. But you think, how is this freedom? Now he's under the roof of his father, under the authority of his father, with his father again. How is this freedom? Well, I live in Australia, and in Australia we love to surf. But one night I was sitting on my surfboard by myself in a beach, watching the sunset, and I saw it. These black, shiny fins swimming towards me. And I'm thinking, sharks. And they came right towards me, and then they went under my board, and then boom, that's when I realized, oh, it's dolphins. And we surfers love dolphins because they're beautiful. They have power, they have grace, they have beauty. They dance, they swim, they play, they frolic. But only they stay in the water, because when they're out of the water, they're no longer free. No beauty, no power, no grace, no freedom. See, we are free only if we live according to our design. So let's flip the script. We're at our most free when we live according to our design, and we are at our most free when we live according to our constraints. The son comes home, and he comes back into relationship with his father. And of course we know this represents God the Father. And he now lives according to the way we've been designed as humans. How have we been designed? Well, we've been designed for at least 3 things. We've been designed for community. We've been designed to give rather than to take. And we've been designed for worship, for transcendence, for the sacred. And we are at our most free when we live this way. And that's why Jesus says this: you will know the truth, and if you know this truth, it will actually set you free. You will be at your most free. And then Jesus says this as well. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. And then Jesus says this, for my yoke is easy. My burden is light. In Jesus, we will be most free. But then you go, hang on, he's talking about a yoke. That's that thing you put on oxen. That's like putting a saddle on a wild horse to tame it. How is this freedom? Well, it's like a yo-yo. A yo-yo, when it's on a string, it's actually at its most free. You can spin around, you can play with it, you can do tricks with it. But if there's no string, the yo-yo can't do anything. It's actually more free when it's constrained the right way. And it's the same. Jesus says, put my yoke upon you and you will spin, you'll fly, and you'll be at your most free. So do you remember our original question today? It was this: what do I have to do to be free? And today we've seen this. The script that we're usually given is this: do whatever you want. Don't listen to anyone else. Only you can choose what to do. In other words, you do you. But we've seen the paradox. It's this: if I'm so free, why am I so trapped? And then we flip the script. We find out we're at our most free when we live according to our design. And we've been designed for Jesus. And we're at our most free when we live according to our constraints. And we're designed to live in relationship with Jesus. Now, there's an Australian who's sort of famous for all the wrong and then all the right reasons. His name's Andrew Chan. We're not related. I know all Asians look the same, but we're not related. But he is a man who chased freedom. He wanted to do whatever he wanted to do, but it led to a jail cell in Bali for trafficking drugs. But while he was in jail, his brother gave him a Bible, and he started reading the Bible, and he discovered Jesus, and he finally surrendered his heart to Jesus. And then Andrew wrote this in a letter. He said this: I said, God, if you're real, and if this is true, I want you to free me. And if you do, I'll serve you every day for the rest of my life. I went to my court hearing, but they convicted me and gave me the death penalty. When I got back to my cell, I said, God, I asked you to set me free, not kill me. And God spoke to me and said, Andrew, I've set you free from the inside out. I've given you life. From that moment on, I haven't stopped worshiping him. I had never sung before, never led worship until Jesus set me free. So he got the death penalty, and on the day he was executed, they tied him to a pole, and while he was waiting for them to kill him, he had just enough time to sing 2 songs. First song he sang was Amazing Grace, the one we just sang. The second song he sang was 10,000 Reasons. And he was singing it when they finally shot him and killed him. But he probably died at his most free because he was in Jesus. And as we look at the words he would have been singing, it would have been this: bless the Lord, O my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, O my soul, I'll worship your holy name. We have been designed to worship Jesus, and we are at our most free when we do so. So when we finally surrender to Jesus, that is when we will be free.